from Fox City Stadium in Grand Chute, Wisconsin, wrapping up Day 2 of the 2016 Division III World Series. I'm Pat Coleman, joined by Jim Dixon of D3Baseball.com, our guru of all things Division III baseball, and we got 4 games in on Saturday, which was a fantastic improvement over the 2 that we got in on Friday. Not without a little bit of rain and not without a little bit of excitement as the night ended after 1 a.m., started at 10 a.m., and a lot of things in between. But I think we're just going to go through games in order, especially since 2 of them were first-round games, and we have to deal with them before we can talk about what happened as a result of those games. So, Jim, we started with what would have been Game 3 from Friday between Keystone and St. John Fisher. St. John Fisher had come through its regional, had looked pretty good in the New York regional all year, and instead it was Keystone who put up a 9 spot in the 6th inning. They were just hitting the ball all over the yard and came away with a 16-3 win in that first game.
They really had a problem stopping the Keystone offense. The thing that stands out right here as I look down at the box score are the 4 errors for St. John Fisher. Yeah. That's uncharacteristic of the Cardinals, and that certainly led to a lot of the problems that they had.
Yeah, Stephen Lewis got the start for the Cardinals. He went 5+, gave up 8 runs, 7 of them earned, but then the relievers, DJ Mendenhall, came in, and he was victimized by the defense as well. All 4 of his runs were unearned, and at that point it was kind of a lost cause. But the big bats in the first game of the day for Keystone, Brandon Eady goes 3 for 3 with a pair of walks, scored 3 times, drove in 3 runs. He was a homer short of the cycle when they pinch hit for him. Robbie Nardelli had 3 RBIs as well for the Giants, 2 for 3, 3 runs scored. Alex Hersig, the catcher, with a couple of ribbies. Chris Triano with a couple of ribbies. And then, the other thing that this does, Jim, is it allowed the Giants to make it a little bit of an easier day for Felix Baez, who was able to come out after 6 innings, threw 6 shutout innings, gave up just 4 hits. And, I wouldn't want to estimate a pitch count, but, maybe an opportunity, especially since the first start for Keystone is a day later than 4 of the teams who played on Friday. Maybe there's an opportunity to bring him back at some point.
I think you're going to see, if Keystone stays in the contest, they're going to have to bring Baez back, and they want to sit there and keep him as fresh as they can. With a big lead, they could throw a couple relievers and be assured of the game. Because after Keystone scored those 9 runs, the game was essentially over, as you said. But when you look down the lineup, up and down, hit. But when you look at St. John Fisher, you only had 1 player with multiple hits, 2 players with multiple hits, and they're not stringing them together back and forth. So it really was not a good opening game for St. John Fisher.
St. John Fisher moved into the losers bracket, and because of the way the rain reshuffled the schedule, they came back to play later. We'll talk about that coming up in a few minutes. But first, our other first-round game in the bottom half of the bracket / Pool B / Bracket 2, whatever you want to call it. LaRoche comes out, gets a great pitching performance from Tanner Wilt. It goes a complete game, and the Red Hawks defeat the Warhawks by the score of 5-3. The Warhawks put together a bit of a rally late. They're down 5-0 going into the bottom of the 8th. They score once in the 8th and then twice in the 9th and actually bring the go-ahead run to the plate. And I wanted to point out the play of Dane Berman, who's the catcher for the Warhawks. Hasn't had a great overall season in terms of offensive production, but drove in 2 runs on Saturday, made a tag play at the plate, threw out a base runner stealing, and I think it's really because of him that they had an opportunity to try to win the game at the end.
The coach said that they play all 9 innings, and so you got to expect Whitewater to sit there and come out, and you got to play them all 9 innings. LaRoche left some runners on the base paths. They sent a runner from third, and it got gunned out, as you said, when they should have just kept them on because they had their best hitter coming up, who was already 3 for 3, who opened the next inning with a single. So this game looks close with a 5-3 score, but it really was not that close at all.
Yeah, big gun on offense for the Red Hawks. Luis Navedo, 4 for 5 with 3 runs batted in, a home run, his 10th of the season. Corey Laser went 3 for 5. Colin Williamson at the top of the order, 2 for 4. So the top 3 batters in the Red Hawks order, 2 for 4, 3 for 5. and then 4 for 5 as they pounded out 11 hits on the afternoon. But I wanted to talk about Tanner Wilt, who, is coming back, has been banged up a little bit, and he tired a little bit down the stretch, but managed to gut it through for the complete game.
He was not used as I would have expected to see in a regional, and he's nursing an injury, and certainly of the one team that needed the extra day, it was LaRoche, because given Tanner Wilt one more day of rest, one more day of recovery, I think it made a big difference in his performance.
Big outing for that young man as he improved to 9-2. So LaRoche moved into the winner's bracket, which meant they did not have to play a second time today. Those teams that did have to play a second time today come up a little bit later. But our first elimination game of the day on Saturday featured the two teams who lost on Friday, and that was Wisconsin Lacrosse and Emory. And this was a really good back and forth game at first, Jim. Emory takes a 1-0 lead. Lacrosse comes back and answers right away in the bottom of the first. Then they tack on a run in the bottom of the second to make it 2-1. Emory comes back with a 2-run shot by Nick Chambers to make it a 4-2 or 3-2 game in the top of the fourth, and then it just all exploded in Lacrosse's favor.
I think you can see this game starting to develop in Lacrosse's favor from the very start. In the first inning, they got that 2-out hit that they've been lacking the game before. Mm-hmm. And so now, once you start hitting is contagious. And so now you got everybody hitting, and when you start looking at the score sheet, hits up and down, multiple hits, everybody getting into the action.
It's my score sheet from that game. It really is. It can be infectious, and Coach Chris Schwartz talked after the game about how just continuing to go hit and run, opening up some space on the left side, bunch of balls going through the left side of the infield. Big hits in this game by Justin Anderson, who had a 2-run double in the fourth as part of that 7-run rally. And then Alex Cordova hit an RBI triple to the wall in right field in the fifth inning as they tacked on 3 more runs. They scored 7 in the fourth and then tacked on 3 in the fifth. And at that point, basically, the game was over. That was indeed the final score, 12-3. I wanted to highlight one other person, though, who we did not really talk about in our game story so much and didn't get as much run, I guess, in the post-game news conference. But Nate Hiley, the third baseman for the Eagles, the UW Lacrosse Eagles, played like he was a freshman. He's at the bottom of the lineup. He had 3 really great at-bats. He had the suicide squeeze that gave Lacrosse its first lead at 2-1. Then he had a RBI single to left that really kind of sparked it. Got in the first run of that rally in the fourth. And then he just mashed a ball off of the second baseman's glove in the sixth for his third hit of the game, and that was a key for them because those top 4 guys at the top of the lineup all had multi-hit games, but the table was set by Hiley at the bottom of the order.
The coach singled out Hiley when he talked about his press conference. He's the only freshman in the lineup, but he's not a freshman anymore.
That's what they say. I hear that.
The coach sat there and he said he's graduated to maybe a sophomore.
And he didn't know what else it would be.
But certainly it might be junior standing because he really has settled into a lineup and he has contributed today.
The win goes to Troy Kinkel. He improved to 9-2. He went 6 innings, gave up 3 runs, 6 hits. Hans Hansen just got all things knocked around on him in the fourth inning. He gave up 9 of those 12 runs, and his season ends at 9-2. Now, all 3 of those games were played consecutively without rain delays or anything, and then 2.5 hours of storm. Beautiful picture on D3Baseball.com. Is that what we're here for? D3 Baseball, right? And a time-lapse video of stuff rolling through, which you guys can look. We won't take the time to include it in this video. You can watch it elsewhere. And then our final game of the night between Wisconsin Whitewater and St. John Fisher. And after all of these teams, after both of these teams have waited a little bit more, they both came out pretty quickly.
They did, and Whitewater scored 3 runs off the bat. So it looked like a rout from the very first inning, but St. John Fisher was able to come back with 2 of their own to keep the game close.
Yeah, Lake Pechar got the start for Whitewater in this game. Victimized a little bit by his defense. He gave up 4 runs on the night. Only one of them was earned. Whitewater committed 5 errors. We don't even have a box score yet. They were still trying to assemble some statistics as we were getting ready to do this. But not a great night defensively for Whitewater. And, St. John Fisher, they talked about it a little bit in the postgame, just beating out hits, forcing the issue a little bit on defense. I thought that the St. John Fisher coach actually didn't give his team enough credit. He said, they were hitting choppers that they were beating out bad ground balls. They beat out some good ground balls as well.
They were certainly make the best of their opportunities. And so you really got to give credit for them turning around. Once again, you look back at the score sheet, and you're going to see a big 0 for errors for St. John Fisher. So whatever they did wrong in the first game, they certainly was able to correct, and it's a good reason why they're going on till tomorrow.
Well, don't spoil the ending yet.
Oh.
But so Whitewater scores the 3 runs in the top of the first. Fisher scores 2 in the bottom, and then adds 1. And then it's a pretty quiet game. Moves along a little bit. Teams kind of settle down until the bottom half of the 9th. The top of the order is up for St. John Fisher. Wiktorski still in the game. Wiktorski doubles to center field off of him. They pull the starter. Prevost gets to pinch hit. That's Ryan Prevost pinch hits for the number 2 spot in the lineup, and right away they have the reliever, Austin Jones, intentionally walk Prevost. So the reliever comes in, throws 4 intentional balls, and then the first pitch to the next batter is a wild pitch, which moves both of those runners up, which kind of always begs the question, right? Is it better to have the guy who's leaving the game throw the intentional pass, or make the guy who's coming into the game throw those 4 intentional balls, and then with the game on the line in a key moment, you have to all of a sudden turn it on and be at your best?
I'm looking at the second intentional walk that comes later in the game, and those pitches weren't anywhere near where they should have been. So maybe this reliever needed some practice
throwing intentionally. So with the intentional walk to Prevost puts runners at first and second. Then the wild pitch moves them up to second and third. And then, the wise move then is to intentionally walk the batter at the plate. That's Mike Roman. Now you've got the bases loaded, nobody out, but you set up the forced play at the plate. Rethel hits an infield grounder, and even though it is a bit of a slow roller to the second baseman, they make the play at the plate, get the first out, and then the next batter comes up. That's Malcolm Kelsey, and why don't you tell us about it?
Well, he hits a grounder, and the runner comes in third and beats it out. What didn't happen to batter before happened to batter later, and Malcolm Kelsey was out there standing on first base, waiting for all his friends to sit there and come by and mob him. And sure they did, because this is a big win for St. John Fisher. It
is. They stay in the tournament, and they will play on, what's next? Sunday's next, right? Even go back to the top of the 9th, for example. Similar situation. Whitewater's threatening. They have a runner at third. They have the bases loaded. They have multiple runners on base. And then, but St. John Fisher gets the defensive double play to end that inning and send it to the bottom of the 9th.
This game could have gone either way.
This game could still be going on.
Whitewater could certainly have scored, and it's hard to say. That double play was a great killer, but it was pretty close coming on. So you get a little faster runner, maybe we're still playing. But you really got to give credit for St. John Fisher sitting there and coming back, facing adversity, and finding a way to win.
Coming up on Sunday, we start with Trinity versus Cortland at 10 a.m. That's the game we talked about yesterday. Those 2 teams won on Friday, and because of the rejuggled bracket, because of the rain, they got to sit today. Now, I am always a little bit confused as to what game comes next after this, because now things get a little jumbled, right?
So we're bringing for the first game, we're bringing the first pool, first bracket, the winner's game. The second game is now is the second bracket winner's game. So we have LaRoche coming by and playing Keystone. And that is one game that I'm looking really forward to see, because these are two offenses that can certainly rake, and you know they're going to bring their best number two, and we're just going to see who wins. This is, the first bracket was full of the top-ranked teams, and it's, any team that comes out of bracket is favored to win the whole championship. But the second bracket, you sit there and you can have a team sneak into the championship series and maybe steal a national championship.
So Trinity and Cortland, LaRoche and Keystone, all four of those teams are undefeated. The teams that lose those games on a Sunday come back and play in the later games. So the Trinity-Cortland loser will come back around and they will play Wisconsin lacrosse, right? I've got that right, in the third game of the day. I'm kind of feeling this out as it goes along. And the team that loses the LaRoche-Keystone game comes back around and plays St. John Fisher in the fourth game on Sunday.
And that's our schedule.
That's our schedule. So hopefully we will keep to it because we need to get all these games in. I know Jim will say we're just as far ahead as we were last year, but I didn't like where we were last year. I like when we follow the schedule and we don't have 2 whole games lost by rain or, God forbid, the whole day lost to rain like we had last year.
It has been trying to sit there and does both last year and this year, sit there and deal with all the rain.
Yep. But I tell you, the grounds crew has done a fantastic job. The upgraded field with the $200,000 spent on new drainage has done fantastically here. And I'm sure the Timber Rattlers who call this place home for 72 games a year, right, probably appreciate that as well. For Jim Dixon, I'm Pat Coleman. That's our Day 2 wrap-up. And don't forget to check out all the other things we mentioned on d3baseball.com. Photo galleries, game stories from all 4 of those games, a couple of extra feature stories that were posted on Saturday. Time-lapse video of the 2.5-hour rain delay, including the storm rolling through and then cleaning off that pristine stadium when all things were said and done. So check all that out on d3baseball.com, and we'll see all our coverage on Sunday.